Hey everybody. So previous video didn't work. I'm going to upload this one again. So we're going to look at some tips for grading in Krav Maga. Now this video is going to focus on what somebody on a grading panel, namely myself, will be looking for when I grade people in Krav Maga. Now I'm going to talk about, what I think is important, but keep in mind that every school and system and style and coach and instructor and so on and so forth will have their own way of doing it, and that's totally fine. The way that I do it, I like to think is okay. And it's also consistent with the way that the rest of the coaches here do it at Combat Arts Institute, as well in Gendai Ryu, Krav Maga, and across the Modern Warrior Alliance. So I'm going to talk about 5 things that, as somebody who sits on a grading panel, I would be looking for when I grade somebody. And the first one, not surprisingly enough, is a technical skill base. Okay, so we're looking at what techniques do you know, how well you can do them, so on and so forth. But what is really, really important here is the idea of self-defense comes first. So what that means is, right, if you've got a really great striking skill set, but you only practice that in a competition sport context, for example, you do really well in sparring, but you don't know how to deal with, let's say, a scenario or a haymaker or something like that, then you're probably not going to grade very well or very far in Krav Maga specifically. Okay, so we're looking at a technical skill base with the idea that self-defense comes first, and we want to train for what real violence looks like, and our training, both in terms of technique and otherwise, needs to reflect that. Okay, the other thing is that depending on where you are, in the system, I might be looking primarily, at least especially with lower belts, at a skill base which is narrow and deep. What that means is I'd rather you have a small number of things you can do really, really well under stress all of the time than a large number of techniques which you can kind of do but not really pull them off when it counts. Okay, so the first one is a technical skill base and the idea that self-defense comes first. Okay, from there, the second thing we're going to look at is attributes. So attributes is essentially everything that is not your skill base. Okay, so we're looking at things like speed, strength, fitness, timing, conditioning, your ability to take a hit, so on and so forth. Now, as we often say, all else being equal, attributes trump skill, right? So somebody who is stronger, fitter, faster, can take a shot, so on and so forth, but has limited skill will generally perform better than the other way around in a self-defense situation. Obviously, we want to develop both at the same time. Now, the other thing about attributes is that attributes are also, they differ from person to person, right? So the attributes of somebody in their 20s will be different to somebody in their 70s, right? And what that means is what we really want to see is development of attributes, not necessarily a set benchmark. Okay, so as long as you're continuing to develop your attributes, that's what we're after. Okay, then the third set, or the third component, is a subset of attributes, which is mental fortitude or the warrior spirit, right? Now, self-defense is really all about this. What that means is when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? What that means is that you don't quit when things get hard. You have the warrior mindset. You can flip the aggression switch on, and when things are really hard, you don't give up. All right, that is probably the number one thing that's going to get you through a violent altercation, okay, your mindset. So in a grading context, what we want to see is that exactly that, is that you don't give up. The gradings are meant to push you both physically and mentally. And what we want to see is that if you fall down, you get up and you keep going. If you stuff something up, you don't get frustrated and walk over to the corner or sit out or the rest of your grading is the performance is not great. What we want to see is your ability to take a hit, both physically and the proverbial mental hit, get up and keep going. Okay. Following on from that, the fourth thing we look at is essentially your we'll refer to it as a code of conduct, right? But really the behavior that we would expect to see from somebody who grades in our system, who is learning skills that can be potentially dangerous, right? So what we want to see in a grading context is that you show respect to the people you train with, both above and below you in terms of rank and experience, to your instructors, that you follow instructions, that you come to the grading on time and you wear your uniform and you acknowledge and show respect, you fist bump or shake hands with the people you train with. You're humble. So we want to see that you can exemplify the Bushido code, right? The warrior code, and make sure that the people who are learning these skills also have the right mindset. Okay, and that's really, really important. And lastly is consistency. So it's really important to remember that while the grading provides a benchmark or a spot check in a given point in time, it doesn't necessarily reflect how you perform on a day-to-day basis, right? So the hard work is done before you reach the grading, right? That's all the training that you've done leading up to it. So what we really want to see is consistency in training across time, not just that you're going, oh, far out, I've got a grading in a month, I better start coming to classes a bit more. Right? If you do 6 classes a week, a month before, that's not consistency. Even if you train less and you can only make, 2 or 3 sessions a week, but you do that consistently every week without fail, right? For 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, that's how you get results. So that's also something that we look at when you come to the grading. It's not just how you perform on the day, but how have you been consistent with your training across time, right? So those are the things that we look at, or that I look at, but we look at Kaya, when you're looking to come to your Krav Maga grading. Keep those in mind. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask.